So I thought what I'd do is write a short book, not 600, 700 pages.
Yes.
Make it so they can read it in a weekend or, a long day or evening. And then I wanted to write a book that also was really a playbook, showed you exactly what to do. So if you're a baby boomer and you never got started, you can still make it. Or if you're, somebody who's, let's say, a millennial and you feel like you've been to college and you got so much debt and you never get out of it, This is the plan how to get out of it. But I really wanted to get rid of the fear. I wanted to show people that there's nothing to fear and do it not with enthusiasm, but with facts. Well, I think the best performers are focused on outcomes and not activities. If you try to manage your to-do list in the world we live in today, where most of us have multiple roles, we're trying to be a great business person, a great husband or wife, great father, great community member, or whatever. There's just so many roles, you can never get all your to-dos done. And what helped me in my life was I started at one point saying, I'm not going to let myself fail every day. I'm not going to get a to-do list, and I'm not going to not write a list so that I don't fail. I need to focus on what matters most. I needed to organize my life into categories where I say, these are the most important outcomes, and then I know why I'm going to do it. If you know what you really want, the target, and you know why, you have the focus and you have the fuel, then how to get there, there's so many ways to get there. And then the most important thing I think that the most productive people do is we leverage what we do. We don't delegate. Delegation is I give it to you, and then when it doesn't work out, I'm pissed at you. Leverage is I empower you. If I'm leveraged, I'm still part of that, and I'm going to make sure you succeed. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to make sure before the deadline I touch base with you. I'm going to make sure you have the resources to succeed. But what I do is empower people. Go, here's the outcome, here's the why. I get you and I aligned with the outcome and the why. You figure out how you want to do it. I'm open. You want to brainstorm with me? I'll do it. You'll probably come up with better ideas than I do. And when you empower people to come up with their own how, and they know what and why, you can get the job done 100 times faster, especially if you get a group of people. I'm a big believer that early in my life, I thought I was such a smart person. I'm going to solve all this stuff. Part of it was being responsible, and part of it is ego that we all have inside ourselves if we've succeeded to a certain extent. I said, this is bullshit. You know what? Instead of one person solving 12 problems, I want 12 people solve one problem. And I developed that practice, and I began to find that people that many people thought weren't going to contribute had insights nobody else had. I really got it from Steve Wynn. Steve Wynn's a dear friend of mine, and he's rebuilt Las Vegas, one of those brilliant men I know, multi-billionaire. And Steve really learns the most from the bellmen, from the people that would never make it into the C-suite. He learns what customers are feeling, what they're experiencing, how to have an impact, what needs to be changed, because these people are on the front lines. So I'm a big believer that you need leverage. And if you're just starting out in business, and so my view is I don't do anything that someone else can do better, and I don't do anything that isn't the highest and best use of my time. Now, when I say that, that's gross generalization. There are things I still will do, but for the most part, by finding people and getting clear on outcomes and the why, what I call RPM, you gotta know the result, you gotta know the purpose, and then you gotta have a massive action plan. And the plan can change, but that RPM, the stronger the RPMs, the faster that car is gonna move. And I try to do that, not just through myself, but through other people. I have to remember one thing. The biggest myth you have, not the one that's been sold to you, that hurts you is the average person thinks finance is so complex because, frankly, the industry tries to make it sound complex. They use words that you don't know, so you don't know what to do. What does this mean? And so what happens is we just give them our money and say, deal with it. And we don't realize that system has been set up. It's not an evil system. It's set up by corporations that are looking to maximize profit for those corporations. They're not looking out for the investor because this investor's second. And we think we're first, and we're not. So the first piece is you got to know that you can't wait till you have a ton of money to start investing and think I'm not an investor. What you got to do is say, rather than my Apple phone, let me own Apple stock. Let me own a piece of all the best companies, not just Apple. I've got to become an owner or I'll always be in scarcity. If you can invest in business, even a small amount, you can grow. I don't care how small it is, but you got to automate it. If you really want to have freedom, then what you have to do is you've got to take that percentage aside like Theodore Johnson did, and you got to just say, this is for me, this is my freedom. There's a part of what I earn, as basic as it is, we all know this from investing, there's a part of what I earn that is mine and my family's to keep and no one's going to touch it and I'm going to grow it. But I also believe that where you put that really matters. And so indexing is the most basic way to do it for sure. But what all these investors showed me is asset allocation is where the difference is in business, right, in life. If you look at it, the fourth key we talk about in the 4 steps is you got to really understand asset allocation. Because when I was with David Swenson, Dave said, Tony, I said, what are the dials you can move? I mean, there's a limited number of dials you can move to increase your returns, to get to your financial freedom faster. He said, oh, there's really only 3. He said, You can make a better choice selection of the actual investments or the securities. You can have better timing, or you can have better asset allocation. He said, let me give you a clue. The first two will never happen. He said, because they cost money if you get them from somebody else, and everybody's wrong on timing, everybody's wrong on the stocks. This is where all your money is made as asset allocation. What they're going to do to your business when someone takes your product or service and gives it away for free? So I always tell people, competition happens, technology happens. What you must do is have a second business with no moving parts, no people, no time. Maybe it takes you 3 days a year for 2 or 3 hours after you've read the book. You put it in place and you measure it 2 or 3 times a year. That's it. Go on with your life. Now, if there's a trouble in your business, you're financially set. In my life, at 31 companies now, we have, what do we have? 1,200 employees, 7 different industries. We do $5 billion in sales. I mean, I used to be, me and my seminar business. It's grown geometrically. But with all those moving parts, the only way I've been able to succeed is because I've taken every one of those businesses and I've diversified my assets so that when things were in trouble, I still had enough economics to take care of myself and keep the business going. So everybody needs to create a money machine that works while you sleep, that doesn't have moving parts, and that's what this is really about. The pattern I see in slumps, whether it be an athlete or a financial trader or an actor or any of that nature, is number one thing that causes a slump usually is you get too comfortable. When you start doing something and you're really successful, a lot of people lose their hunger. And if you ask me, what is the single most important element of any human being that separates their level of success from the rest of the world? It's hunger. It isn't intelligence, as valuable as that is. There are people that are incredibly intelligent, can't fight their way up a paper bag. You show me somebody who's not only hungry, but doesn't lose their hunger, they will dominate everything. And you see that in the greatest sports stars, the greatest entertainers, the ones that they're insatiable. And because of that, you like being around them because there's this energy about them, this passion about them, and very few people maintain that. And you lose your hunger, you go into a slump. You get overconfident. Another pattern that happens that gives people a slump is when something changes in their world that they're not prepared for. Like, I've been doing this forever, and oh my God, my relationship's messed up, or I've been working hard and being a lawyer, and now my wife's upset, her husband's upset with me. What do I got to do here? And what it does is it throws people off their rhythm. And so I try to figure out what's happening in their environment and show them how they can win in both categories simultaneously. A third one is when people do something where they get mad at themselves, kind of like a Tiger Woods, and then he's got all the skill in the world, nothing changed in his skill, but for that year and a half or whatever it was, he was beating himself up, And in that state, it's kind of a self-sabotage. And so depending on what form I find, I enter in and make the changes. And there are almost always changes, again, in the psychology of that person, the emotion of that person, because we have these great minds. Everyone's got a great mind, or at least available great mind. But we're emotional creatures. And we forget that because we live in a society that tries to value thought much more than emotion, because emotion is scary for us. Emotion can come really fast. And so some people try to avoid it at all costs. Other people are overwhelmed by it. My view is that emotional intelligence is a wonderful thing, but I much prefer emotional fitness. Intelligence is a capability. Fitness is a state of readiness. And what I do is I train myself to always be ready, and that makes you execute. And I think too many people settle for, I know this, as opposed to I'm doing this. And I try to train myself and others to be in that state of readiness all the time, because that's where life is really fulfilled at the highest level, I think. Another guy I interviewed is a man named Kyle Bass. Kyle Bass took $30 million, gathered money together, a lot of money, but other people's money, turned it into $2 billion in the middle of the subprime crisis.
That's a very big return.
You can say that in 2 years, right?
Oh my God.
So how did you do this? It's historic. There's several books you read and they open up the chapter, and some of the most historic books written recently. The gentleman who wrote Flyboys also wrote one of the books, and he starts out talking about Kyle Bass doing this incredible piece. It's like being there with him. But the way he did it was he risked 6 cents to make $1, and he just leveraged that up. So he could be wrong how many times and still break even? 15, he could be wrong 15 times and make money. So, but he's also smart as hell. He looked at things, he evaluated things. It's more detailed than I explained in the book, but the core they all have in common is they risk for valuable returns. You swap those words and you swap peak state for beautiful state. I said, that works. A high energy state is a beautiful state. Any state where your high energy would be like love or joy or gratitude or drive or courage or faith or, playfulness or fun, any of those things are beautiful states. So good, yeah, I agree. And I said, and then suffering states would be low energy states. So that would be frustration, sadness, anger, resentment, loneliness, boredom, whatever. He goes, yeah, that's exactly right. So I can swap those. He goes, if you swap them, there's something cool that you might see or do. I said, what's that, Christian? And he said, well, he said, I've made a decision that I'm going to live my life where I'm going to live in a beautiful state every day, no matter what, even if it rains on my parade, even if people do things that are unjust. He said, the reason is because in a beautiful state, just like you teach a peak state, everything flows. And I said, well, pretty much what I've been teaching. He goes, yes, but if you think of the lousy states as suffering states, he said, then you can end suffering just by ending the state. And I said, I don't really relate to the word suffering. And I think most achievers do. Most achievers don't even get fearful. We get stressed. Right. I always tell people fear is the achiever word for stress, because like, follow your stress, it'll take me to your fear. But I realized I didn't relate to suffering. Like if you had told me 2 years ago, Tony, do you suffer? It's like, yeah, I got the greatest life. I have the most incredible wife and 4 kids, and I got 31 companies, and I'm financially free, and I have a mission I love, and I'm in good health. And that would all be honest. I wouldn't have been dishonest about it. But what really helped me out of that conversation, I left there and I went, well, where do I suffer? And I realized frustration is suffering. I get frustrated. I get concerned. I get pissed off. I get, worried sometimes. I get these feelings. And so what I decided to do was, just really create a 90-second rule for myself where I would end suffering as it arises. Because anybody tells you you're going to end suffering. The reason is your brain is a 2 million-year-old brain, and it's not designed to make you happy. It's designed to make you survive. But there's no saber-toothed tiger for you to react to anymore. So now we worry about, what are people thinking of us? Do I have enough money? And in this country, in America, if you are in utter poverty, and I hate poverty, I feed 100 million people a year, so I'm not sitting on the sidelines. But if you make the worst and the least amount of money in this country and you're in total poverty, you're in the 1% of earners on the earth. Because 75% of the planet lives on $2.50 a day.
Right.
So what I try to do is show people you can't build on failure, you can only build on success. So over the last 2 years, what I've done is play this little 90-second rule. And if I feel tension in me, I go, okay, that's suffering. Where's it come from? What am I stressed about? What am I concerned about? And what I immediately do is I realize the stressful thought. Since I've seen Christian G, I kind of traded one thing. What I really do now is I dig in and I notice that the only time you have stress or suffer is when you believe a stressful thought.